Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm Sam Sachs. Welcome to Friday. Now press the button that starts the show. Oh, I don't think I was supposed to read that part. And we begin here in the United States, where 55 million legal residents are now under review by the State Department and could be deported. The government made the declaration in response to a question from the Associated Press. All visa holders are subject now to, quote, continuous vetting. The AP reported, quote, the department said it was looking for indicators of ineligibility, including people staying past the authorized time frame outlined in a visa, criminal activity, threats to public safety, engaging in any form of terrorist activity, or providing support to a terrorist organization. This dragnet has the potential to dramatically increase the president's mass deportation numbers. The administration has defined support for a terrorist organization to include First Amendment protected activity, such as attending a pro-Palestine demonstration or publishing and expressing opinions critical of Israel. The State Department already revoked the student visas of roughly 6,000 foreign individuals studying at U.S. universities, primarily due to their involvement in anti-genocide protests over the last year and a half. And the administration bragged to the AP that since Inauguration Day, it's revoked twice as many visas compared to last year. Now, the entire visa population is subject to the same scrutiny, and that includes tourists. Restrictions have already been imposed on prospective visa applicants who will now be vetted for thought crimes against the U.S. before being allowed to enter the country. And hundreds of thousands of people living in the U.S. under protected status due to various hardships in their home country have had that permission to be in the U.S. revoked by President Trump and could be deported. Workers are especially vulnerable to these sweeps. Secretary Rubio also announced the State Department would pause issuing all work visas to commercial truck drivers, despite the industry facing a shortage of roughly 60,000 workers. Rubio claimed on Twitter, quote, the increasing number of foreign drivers operating large tractor-trailer trucks on U.S. roads is endangering American lives and undercutting the livelihoods of American truckers. The spear tip of Trump's mass deportation campaign is pressing on Washington, D.C., where immigrant workers are particularly vulnerable. ICE is reportedly tagging along with D.C. police and targeting delivery drivers on mopeds. One officer told the Washington Post, quote, ICE agents are in the back while we make the stop. Then, while we are verifying permit status, they are using that information to determine immigration status. What that means, if you get caught going 7 miles per hour over the speed limit in DC and you don't have the correct citizenship papers on you, you're going into indefinite detention. And you could be deported to some far-off place like Uganda. I'm serious, Uganda. The Ugandan Foreign Ministry announced it struck a deal with the Trump administration to take in people deported from this country in clear violation of international law. The terms are still being finalized, but Uganda agreed to take in migrants living in the U.S. as long as they don't have a criminal record and aren't unaccompanied minors. The White House claims it is only targeting the worst of the worst, but most people detained and deported in the U.S. have no criminal record whatsoever, and several U.S. citizen children have been deported, along with their parents, including kids who were receiving life-saving medical care in the U.S. No details on what will happen to individuals deported to Uganda, In July, the administration deported several men to the African country of Eswatini, a place they had no connection to. They've since been locked away in solitary confinement until the country can find a way to deport them back to their home nations. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the Department of Homeland Security is on the verge of losing one of its most notorious immigrant jails, Alligator Alcatraz. A federal judge ordered the government to begin moving detainees out of the facility and shutting it down. Individuals imprisoned there reported human rights abuses and were denied access to legal counsel. However, that's not the reason why Alligator Alcatraz is being shut down. No, instead, it's because Florida officials built the prison without undertaking an appropriate environmental review. Quote, "The project creates irreparable harm in the form of habitat loss and increased mortality to endangered species in the area," Judge Kathleen Williams wrote. The government is appealing the decision. Now to Gaza, where a famine has officially been declared by the United Nations. The IPC, also known as the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, is the leading authority in the world identifying famine. Its latest report on Gaza finds that, quote, "After 22 months of relentless conflict, over 500,000 people in the Gaza Strip are facing catastrophic conditions characterized by starvation, destitution, and death. Between mid-August and the end of September 2025, conditions are expected to further worsen, with famine projected to expand to Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis. Nearly a third of the population, 641,000 people, are expected to face catastrophic conditions." The report adds, quote, "Through June 2026, at least 132,000 children under 5 are expected to suffer from acute malnutrition, double the IP estimates from May 2025. This includes over 41,000 severe cases of children at heightened risk of death, nearly 55,500 malnourished pregnant and breastfeeding women will also require urgent nutrition response." The head of the IPC, Tom Fletcher, spoke to the world about these findings.
"Be in no doubt that this is irrefutable testimony. It is a famine, the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented. It is a famine that hits the most vulnerable first, each with a name, each with a story, that strips people of dignity before it strips them of life. It is a famine that we repeatedly warned of, but that the international media has not been allowed in to cover, to bear witness. It is a famine in 2025, a 21st century famine, watched over by drones and the most advanced military technology in history. It is a famine openly promoted by some Israeli leaders as a weapon of war. It is a famine on all of our watch. Everyone owns this. The Gaza famine is the world's famine. It is a famine that asks, but what did you do? A famine that will and must haunt us all.
As you'd expect, the Israeli government denied the conclusions in the report. At the same time, the country's defense minister, Israel Katz, vowed to, quote, "open the gates of hell" on Gaza City. The Israelis are fully aware of what they're doing here. New data leaked straight from the Israeli government confirms what people in Gaza have been reporting all along. The Israeli military is trying to eliminate the civilian population. A consortium of news outlets, including The Guardian, reported on figures which came from an Israeli military intelligence database. They show that as of May this year, when the official Palestinian death toll stood at more than 53,000, The Israelis calculated that only 8,900 of those were Hamas or other Palestinian resistance groups. This is from The Guardian. Quote, fighters named in the Israeli military intelligence database accounted for just 17% of the total, which indicates that 83% of the dead were civilians. That apparent ratio of civilians to combatants among the dead is extremely high for modern warfare, even compared with conflicts notorious for indiscriminate killing, including the Syrian and Sudanese civil wars. This chart shows that the rate of civilian deaths in Gaza puts the Israeli military up there with some of the most notorious butchers in modern history. And while places like Mariupol and Srebrenica had higher civilian death rates, they had significantly fewer total civilians die in those attacks compared to Gaza. Only Rwanda exceeds the size of the body count and the rate of civilian death. And finally, let's go to New Jersey, where a federal court ruled that Trump's personal lawyer, Alina Habba, has been illegally serving as the U.S. attorney for the district since last month. The ruling could potentially lead to cases that Habba is working on getting thrown out and any other work she's done voided. Trump appointed Habba as acting U.S. attorney earlier this year. Since she wasn't confirmed the position, she could only serve for 120 days, and that term expired last month. The Senate opted not to confirm her. However, the White House then reappointed Habba back to the same position. According to Judge Matthew Braun, you can't do that. This is from the ruling, quote, the executive branch has perpetuated Alina Habba's appointment to act as the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey through a novel series of legal and personnel moves. Faced with the question of whether Ms. Habba is lawfully performing the functions and duties of the office of the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, I conclude that she is not. The White House will appeal the ruling, and Habba herself went on Fox News and said she's staying in her role.
I am the pick of the president. I am the pick of Pam Bondi, our attorney general, and I will serve this country like I have for the last several years in any capacity. You might try and change my title. You might try and fight me. But just like today with New York, we will win. We always do. It just takes time.
Lady, the only capacity you've been serving the country in over the last 2 years is as Trump's personal lawyer, and it's a position you still hold. On Thursday, a judge in New York vacated a $500 million civil fraud penalty against President Trump, stemming from his conviction last May for falsifying business records. Habba, in her role as acting U.S. attorney, tweeted about that ruling, claiming the case against Trump was, quote, politically motivated, legally baseless, and grossly excessive. President Trump won and justice won with him, Habba wrote. In Thursday's ruling, Judge Braun noted that illegal appointments like Habba's touches on the very same grievances that American revolutionaries had with the British Crown. The judge cited a previous Supreme Court ruling that read, quote, the manipulation of official appointments had long been one of the American revolutionary generation's greatest grievances against executive power, because the power of appointment to offices was deemed the most insidious and powerful weapon of 18th century despotism. Oh yeah, Trump is bringing back some 18th century despotism. Scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration are being denied critical tools needed to monitor the weather and planetary changes. Sources told CNN that next-gen weather satellites that are planned for launch in the coming decades are being stripped of their capabilities. Quote, 2 planned instruments, one that would measure air quality, including pollution and wildfire smoke, and another that would observe ocean conditions in unprecedented detail, are no longer part of the project, the sources said. This would fit in with a pattern of degrading the science necessary to study climate change. Back in July, the Trump administration ordered the Pentagon to stop sharing critical data from its weather satellites with meteorologists. And science budgets at NOAA and NASA that are devoted to studying climate change have been gutted. The US government is not just denying that global warming is happening, it's actually shutting down the tools in science that proves global warming is happening. It's a strategy that future generations, I'm sure, will question when they have to wear breathing masks just to step outside. Okay, gang, it's time to take out the trash. This week's Rich Dick is Congressman Rob Bresnahan. The freshman Republican from Pennsylvania is a multi-millionaire who was gifted control of his family's electrical business at the age of 19. He also owns a real estate development firm, and Bresnahan's already distinguished himself in his first 8 months in office as one of the most prolific stock traders on Capitol Hill. According to the site Capital Trades, which tracks lawmakers' activities in the market, he's made 626 trades already in office, the second most of any member. He's moved more than $7.2 million in those transactions. But it's the nature of those trades that have really earned Bresnahan the dishonors this week. The New York Times reported that he dumped a lot of healthcare investments just as he was voting for legislation that would gut Medicaid and close rural hospitals. Quote, on March 27th, Mr. Bresnahan sold off between $100,001 and $250,000 worth of bonds issued by the Allegheny County Hospital Development Authority for the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The sale came after a report identified 10 rural hospitals in Pennsylvania that face immediate risk of closure, and a month after Mr. Bresnahan voted for the House budget resolution that paved the way for large Medicaid cuts. Wow, so Bresnahan was aware that the legislation he supported would close hospitals in his home state. But he wasn't concerned about that would do to people who rely on those medical services. He was, however, concerned about what financial exposure he had to the carnage and made sure to sell off. And he did it again with the company Centene, the largest Medicaid plan provider in the U.S., selling off up to $15,000 worth of stock in the firm just a couple weeks before Trump signed the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that eviscerated Medicaid. Centene's stock price dropped 40% after Bresnahan sold. What's funny is Bresnahan campaigned for office promising to ban members of Congress from trading stock. Then he gets elected and sells more stock than almost everyone else. The New York Times asked Bresnahan why he doesn't lead by example and halt his own stock trading, and he said, quote, and then do what with it? Just leave it all in the accounts and just leave it there and lose money and go broke? That's weird, Rob. Why would you go broke if we're living in Trump's golden age? But yeah, to answer your question, yes. You didn't have to run for office and acquire a position that requires the public's trust, dipshit. Bresnahan's already betrayed that trust in multiple ways beyond stock trading. He promised back in February he would not vote for a bill that cuts Medicaid. He said in a very forceful statement, quote, if a bill is put in front of me that guts the benefits my neighbors rely on, I will not vote for it. Pennsylvania's 8th district chose me to advocate for them in Congress. These benefits are promises that were made. And where I come from, people keep their word. He doesn't keep his word, just the other people where he comes from does, because Bresnahan voted for the bill that's going to throw millions of people off Medicaid, including in his own district, one of the poorest in Pennsylvania. Scumbag. You know who else is a scumbag? Teamsters President Sean O'Brien, who is funneling campaign contributions to Bresnahan. Yeah, he's one of the Republicans the union is giving money to. Wild. Bresnahan also reportedly owns a secret helicopter. Yeah, according to Notice, it's a 2024 Robinson R66 that retails between $1 million and $1.5 million, and he has yet to reveal the existence of this helicopter in his financial disclosures. A secret helicopter, huh? This might not be such a bad development, actually, because on numerous occasions, helicopters have proven themselves to be comrades, if you know what I mean. So, to the rich dick congressman from Pennsylvania, Rob Bresnahan, keep flying that dang thing. All right, friends, the show ends today with another sunrise from Canada. It was sent in by Eric in Ottawa. Enjoy. Thank you, Eric. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.